Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for our regular Thursday lecture. I hope that today is going great. We are thrilled to have you here with us learning more about essay writing and of course writing personal statements for undergraduate programs at US universities. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, let me just briefly introduce myself. As some of you may already know, my name is Victoria and I'm of course the outreach coordinator for the Education USA network here in Ukraine. We are part of the global network of the US Department of State committed to promoting diversity in US higher education system and building bridges of knowledge across borders. As the official source on US higher education, we offer accurate, comprehensive, and unbiased information about opportunities to study at accredited colleges and universities in the United States. Today, we're going to dive deeper into effective essay writing for US admissions. So, if you're a high-achieving student who plan to study in the United States, don't miss your chance to learn more about one of the world's foremost research universities, Princeton University. Find out about the application requirements, funding opportunities, and most importantly, how to write an impactful personal statement. Do you want to hear about the expectations of the admissions committee, identify engaging topics for your essay, and of course, receive writing advice? Well, then today's webinar is perfect for you. It is an honor to welcome today's guest speaker, Alexom Бастіном, Senior Associate Dean, Director of International Admissions at Princeton University, who will provide you with the right tools and methods on how to write a strong personal essay, and of course, to get into the top choice of your school and make sure that you really stand out among the pile of other applicants. Before we get started, let me just encourage you to stay proactive and ask lots of questions. We would love to hear from you. So do not hesitate to reach out and put your questions in the comments below. So without further ado, Alex, I'll turn it over to you. Please take it away.
Thank you very much, Victoria, to you and all your colleagues for inviting me, and thank you to everyone tuning in and listening today. It's a real pleasure to be here presenting to you through representing Princeton University. I am on the Princeton University campus right now, live right now. It's just after 11 o'clock in the morning. I know it's the evening for you all right now, so I hope you all are having a wonderful evening. Very proud to be presenting to you as both the Director of International Admission, managing all of Europe personally as well, and also my own personal connection to Ukraine. My mother was born just outside of Lviv as well. So very nice to be connected with you on that front as well. So as mentioned, I will speak to you a little bit about the overall university culture and process in the United States in the context of Princeton, as well as our admission process, which will certainly help to, I hope, contextualize the importance of essay writing and understanding the goals and achievements that you have to date. I think, as Victoria said, we are absolutely looking for highly motivated and high achieving students, but US universities are looking for much more than students who do well academically and will produce great work and great research. We are communities beyond just the academic front. So the way you talk about yourself and the way you help us understand you through your essays and also through recommendations really helps us get a sense of not just you as a student, but you as an individual person, you as a community member, you as an impact and change maker in the classroom, but also how that translates to impacting your community socially, maybe politically, maybe as a member of the community. These are all important parts of the fabric of the university system. So I want to give you a sense of what that looks like at Princeton, how that's evaluated at Princeton through the admission office, and why parts of the essay and the recommendations are so important and a good way to approach that. So we'll switch to the presentation now, where I can show you really what the different layers are to this process in terms of the layers of understanding the university beyond just excellent academic programs, and also the layers of understanding yourself and understanding how to best represent yourself in the application. I'll try to keep this to about 30 minutes as promised, or a little bit less, and leave plenty of time for Q&A. So please note those down, note those questions as they come, and we'll answer them all at the end. But to quickly just go over the overview of what writing looks like on the application, this can vary by different universities. Some universities have just one main essay you have to write. Some of them will have several different essays in addition to that main personal statement. And some of them will have opportunities for you to showcase academic writing, maybe other optional areas of writing. So they all kind of fall generally into one of these four categories. Princeton is an example of an institution that really wants to get to know you on a lot of levels. So we will require all of these categories. Some institutions will require just one or two or some combination of those, but these are four to be prepared to write about. The first is the personal statement and the essays that really help us understand, again, your context and your achievements to date. That essay is usually the longest form. It's maybe 500, 600 words, give or take. And these are sometimes what we call the common essays. So if you're applying to colleges that use the common application, the coalition application, platforms that allow you to submit similar information to several different universities that are members of that application, you can usually keep this broad and talk about yourself as the way you would talk about yourself to several different universities and use a very similar essay for several types of universities. In addition to that, you'll also have short answers in some cases. These are more institution specific. So these will be specific to the actual college you're applying to. For example, you may be looking to study physics, or you may be looking to study politics or certain amounts of literature. And there are, hundreds, even thousands of different universities in the United States that have great programs in those areas. But the way they teach those programs and also the way they exist outside of academia are very different. So yes, you will see rankings in Forbes or US News about the best university and how they rank institutions, but those are really subjective rankings. They don't capture everything about the type of fit of a university. There's no single best ranked university for everybody, depending on what you want to study and what kind of environment you're looking for. So these colleges kind of think of them as having different personalities, different ways of teaching things. And if you're looking at one particular university, the university will ask you institution-specific questions. What is it about our physics department? What is it about our politics department, or our faculty at Princeton or another college, or our community outside of academics that appeals to you? These will be essays that will be more specifically tailored to that college that you generally won't share across different universities. Now, again, the theme may be similar. You are the same person and you want to study physics at different colleges, but the reasons why one college versus another will vary across these institutions and these short answers. And this is what will really help the university understand where the intersection is between you and your goals and why that university is a very good fit for you. A third component is the graded written paper. Academic writing. These are core things that you may have written for an individual class. For a U.S. university, these will be required to have been written in English. So a translation, again, won't necessarily correlate because we're looking for how you will write in English at that university. This is more common to see among liberal arts colleges. So colleges that, while they may have great social science and STEM departments, they will also be asking you to write about humanities areas or social science areas as well, to help you understand the intersection between different academic disciplines and geopolitical implications, social humanities implications, and so forth. So this will be an essay. If you have an essay that you've written for a class in English, maybe an English class or maybe an assignment you've done outside of class, outside of your school for NUSA, this is something that you might want to consider submitting for your essay or for your application. Not many universities require this, but Princeton is an example of one that does, because we're looking for students to be able to write in a rigorous setting. And then finally, a fourth category is what we call optional areas. So other areas where you can explain various circumstances. And this is encouraged if you have maybe particular circumstances unique to your family, maybe challenges that you had in your high school process or in the college application process. Very commonly, students write about how COVID may have impacted them, but whether that was learning online, or maybe there were family health issues, or maybe outside of global or national challenges that are unique to you, helping us understand what circumstances presented themselves while you were in high school and also applying helps us understand the context of your grades, right? So we're not looking at your academic performance or your achievements in a vacuum and that everybody has to have a given standard. We understand that everybody's circumstances are unique, and your performance in one set of circumstances may be a much higher achievement than someone with a different level of performance, but without those challenges. So additional information, educational trajectories, this is all important to include if you feel like you have circumstances that have been challenging for you, displacement for other reasons or whatever. Some students have nothing to submit here, but this is an opportunity to provide that information as well. So these are the four main categories to keep in mind. And quickly, I'm going to go through what we kind of understand the Princeton experience to be, what the experience at a college like Princeton is, and what are those standout pieces that you would want to align yourself with in the application process, as well as how they're evaluated in the admission office. And I hope you can keep these kind of areas in mind as I go through that to help you understand, again, which parts are those that you'd want to highlight. And then I'll come back to this and talk about a little bit more details on how to approach these areas, as well as the recommendations, because on the application, we're not just looking, like I said, at the results, and we're also not just looking at how you write about yourself, but we're also looking about how your recommenders, how your teachers, and how your advocates in your setting help us understand you. So just quickly to talk about Princeton, where we're located, environment and setting is also important. Do you want to live in the United States or outside the United States, on the East Coast, on the West Coast, in an urban setting, in a suburban setting? So to know about Princeton, we're located in the state of New Jersey, a small state kind of within the east or northeast coast, pretty much in the middle between New York City and Philadelphia. So if you've ever been to either of those, or if you know where those are located, we're about 50 miles away in between the middle between New York City and Philadelphia. But we're in a very small suburban town. It's a very walkable campus, but one that is constantly expanding. So it is a residential experience, a community where students are living in this suburban setting, but also in this very quiet suburban green type of campus as well, where you have the township indicated here with various local coffee shops and restaurants. So it's a very quiet, slow-paced town. You're not in a big city here as well. And that may influence itself, like I said, in terms of how you're writing about the application process. Maybe you're interested in access to those cities. Like I said, about 50 miles away, about an hour away from big cities. So you could go to New York City or go to Philadelphia, have access to those. But if you want to live in a different area, that's something that may be a fit for you that you might write about in your application about the interest in Princeton. The academics, though, are certainly things that you want to align yourself with. And one thing that's really important about Princeton is this concept of an undergraduate focus and in gaining attention with faculty. Princeton is uniquely a college that has almost twice as many undergraduates as graduate students, meaning that that college education, that undergraduate focus, really is unique for a major research university with some of the top academic resources available in the world, Nobel Prize winners among them, MacArthur Fellows, Pulitzer Prize winners, pictured here, the recent recipient of the Nobel Prize in Chemistry, David Macmillan, some of the leaders in academia, yet unlike at any other university, they're teaching undergraduates from first year, second year, third year, and fourth year. In a lot of colleges in the United States, these are faculty members that would primarily work with high-level undergraduates, maybe, but primarily graduate students, PhD students, and so forth. And they certainly do that at Princeton. But again, our design is to make these faculty accessible to undergraduates. So if you want that unique opportunity in your area of interest to study in a broad liberal arts setting, but also get great access to faculty and get opportunities for independent research, that's something that makes Princeton a great fit for students. Research is not optional at Princeton, but rather it's actually guaranteed. It's a required part of our curriculum. So if research sounds good to you and you are interested in the research areas and guaranteed opportunities there, that can be a very important point to speak to on your application as well. But again, this is a collaborative environment. If you are someone who likes to work only on your own, again, Princeton may not be the right fit for you because we are looking for, like I said, students to collaborate with our faculty as indicated through research, but also with each other. So whether you're in the libraries or in the engineering areas, that concept of innovation and joint collaboration and sharing perspectives across different thoughts, different communities is an integral part of our curriculum as well through the research and through the independent research that you will write, discover, and publish at Princeton. So we tend to talk about universities, especially research universities, as, especially in the US, having two primary purposes: to disseminate knowledge, to teach students, and also create knowledge through research. Again, all university students at the undergraduate level in the United States are at a university to learn from the dissemination of knowledge, the teaching of knowledge from the university, but not all of them get the opportunity to create knowledge in research. So this is something that you will absolutely get the opportunity to do, to publish a thesis as pictured here as well during your senior year, during your final year, working one-on-one with a faculty member to design a project, design a research project based on your particular interests in the sciences, the social sciences, geographical areas, the humanities, or whatever. That, like I said, is a guaranteed opportunity for every single student at places like Princeton. This is an opportunity that can be provided at a lot of colleges, but very few absolutely guarantee it. So if research is important to you, like I said, that could be a very important part of the curriculum. At the same time, we combine depth of study through research in areas that you're really passionate about with great breadth of study. And this is what we talk about when we say the liberal arts area. The liberal arts is not necessarily anything to do with liberal versus conservative politically, or arts as like opposed to arts, humanities versus sciences and engineering. The liberal arts is an antiquated term that effectively means the liberty to pursue different areas, to engage in different areas in addition to your what we call your major or your area of study. So you may be conducting research in sciences and in engineering or whatever, social sciences or humanities, but we want students to understand, like I said, the intersection of that with different perspectives in collaboration and also within the rest of academia. So that's why taking advantage of diverse perspectives and taking the opportunity to explore different courses is something that you are required to do at a place like Princeton. So again, this may be another thing that you touch upon with the academic experience. You're interested in the depth of study, the research, but also the opportunity to explore different areas, especially if you have interdisciplinary interests. And importantly, you're interested in learning from the diverse perspectives academically, but also in the community. Again, colleges like Princeton are very well known for the elite academic opportunities and research they offer that I've touched upon, but they're also communities of living. Students don't come here just to engage in the academic spaces, but also engage with each other, learn from each other outside of the classroom, living on campus. About 96% of our students live on our green campus. So this is something that we want students to get involved in, and also get involved in other activities as well. So there may be certain extracurricular activities in the arts or in sports or in music or in publications that you do in your high school or outside of your high school. We want students to continue doing those things here, because while they're not a part of the required academic curriculum, they're an important part of engaging with the community and sharing your talents with the community and learning from each other as well. So that's a great opportunity if you feel there are things that you want to continue doing that are not academic, or maybe you just want to explore different things, innovate outside of your comfort zone, outside of the classroom. That's something that we strongly encourage as well. But this is, again, an inclusive community where you will find students, like I said, from very diverse backgrounds, from all 50 United States, as well as over 100 countries internationally. So you will find other students probably with similar interests and maybe similar backgrounds, but you will find students with many, many more different interests and backgrounds, and the interest and the opportunity in engaging with them is incredibly important. That's an ethos that we feel is important. So if you identify with that, that can certainly be a thing to touch upon as well. Service is also a major ethos of Princeton, whether it's through community service, charity work, maybe it's through civic engagement if you're very politically active, or maybe it's through using academic areas to promote access or promote opportunities through your academics or your career, such as Doctors Without Borders, Engineers Without Borders. If you strongly align with an institution that prides itself on all the things I've mentioned in innovation, in academia, and community, but also service over self in terms of contributing to a community greater than yourself, whether it is your home community or a different community, there are a lot of opportunities to do so at Princeton. So touched upon a lot of things that you may find yourself connected to while you're on campus, but also this is a lifelong connection. These are not just communities that you're part of for generally the 4 years while you're on campus. This is a community that you'll be part of for the rest of your life. The pictured here are some students not just graduating, but also coming back for our reunions activities. Those are actually starting this weekend. Those are held every year in May, and great opportunities for students to kind of come back and, like I said, maintain that lifelong connection that they have. So again, summarizing all the things that make Princeton a great fit, maybe you might want to think about a couple of these things that you want to write about in your essays, and adding a little bit of context about why you're a good fit. But one thing I do also want to mention, which is a little bit removed from this, is just the cost of attendance, financial aid, and admission. And knowing that a lot of these elite private institutions tend to be very expensive if you look at the cost of attendance with tuition and living expenses, but also know that these universities are attainable, accessible, and affordable, regardless of what your ability to afford education may be. Because while education is much higher in terms of cost in the United States than abroad, these institutions have some of the strongest financial aid packages and the ability to support those students because of the resources that they have as well. So there are a lot of things to think about in terms of a fit. Cost can certainly be one of them, but know that if you are applying to the top and most highly resourced institutions in the United States, they can be much more affordable, and cost should not necessarily factor into that. And the reason for that is because we have grant-based financial aid that can cover, it can be very generous and cover a lot of those costs. Our financial aid methodology was recently revamped and made even more generous in 2022. But we've always been a leader in terms of financial aid and what we can offer for students based on various income brackets. I will mention that these income brackets are generally attached to the majority of our pool, which are U.S. applicants. So cost of living and different income levels abroad outside of the United States are certainly taken into account. So it's certainly possible that students in different income levels abroad may qualify for different amounts of financial aid. But this basically just shows how generous the financial aid program can be at Princeton, and that the average cost of attendance for students is $80,000 or $90,000 per year. It's a huge amount of money, but Princeton has the money to, for over 25% of those students, cover 100% of that need. So again, you have different types of financial aid here. I'm talking specifically about need-based financial aid, merit aid, and other scholarships I won't get into right now, partly because Princeton doesn't offer those, but also because it's a little bit more of a larger conversation. But know that the financial aid is available there to you, and also at the highest, most highly resourced institutions like at Princeton, because we know that we can cover 100% of what your need may be through our grants. We do not take your need into account in the admission office in terms of deciding whether we want to admit a student or not based on their strengths and achievements. So your financial aid application is a separate application. We don't review that in the admission office. We review your application for admission only. So I'll quickly cover that before I go into a little bit more detail again back to the essays, because I see some questions coming up about that as well. Things that we don't consider, like I said, like a financial aid and so forth, shifting to things that we do consider. This is a holistic review that, again, holistic means the whole person beyond just any quantitative factors or your academic achievement, because again, the way we expect students to engage in the community is not just academically, not just in research or things that are maybe quantifiable by academic parameters, but we're looking to see how beyond that, how will students contribute to the overall academic community? Like I said, not just in the classroom, but in collaborating with our faculty, collaborating with our peers. And these might be things that you write about in the essays as well, not just I want to study physics, I want to study politics, and I have good grades in those areas, but how have you engaged, or how do you see yourself engaging with the way we teach those areas on campus in an interdisciplinary manner, but also in the opportunities for research? How will students engage in the greater Princeton experience? We want to know about what are your potential contributions outside of the classroom, like I said, in the living community, in those extracurricular opportunities. These are things you might speak to on your application as well. You are involved in these communities, or you want to get involved in these areas, and Princeton has a particular strength in service-based areas or different opportunities. So again, these are things where you might align yourself to. And then also, will the student make a good roommate? You are going to live on campus. It's not a question of kind of getting a sense of your living habits one way or the other, but really just more, are you going to be a positive community member? Are you going to be a respectful individual who is interested in engaging with others, sharing your perspectives, but also learning from others and learning from their perspectives and being a collegial and a positive member of the community? This is what we want to know in the application process, where you'll take advantage of the opportunity to write about these pieces. So this holistic review is combined, like I said, of three separate main parts together, where, again, the first is the application itself, the common application, the coalition application. These are platforms that we use. Most colleges will use either one of these platforms, or they'll have their own application, but this is your written part of the application in this number one category here. This is where your essays will be. One of them will be connected maybe to that application platform, coalition or common application. And then the more institution-specific questions, like I said, we really want to get a sense of not just how strong a college applicant are you, but how strong a fit are you for our college. That will be in these Princeton-specific questions. And then we'll also ask for, like I said, that other component, the graded written paper. The request component in the middle, these are support items that you'll get from your actual school. So your transcript and school report, which basically comprises your academic record, internal grades, external grades in some cases for some international students, but also your letters of recommendation from a school counselor. It might be a school counselor or a principal in your school, or it might be an Education USA counselor. Outside of that, maybe someone who's translating your recommendations if they're not written in English. But also, we would require 2 teacher recommendations. And these recommendations, again, are required because your teacher could tell us your grade. It'll be on your transcript. It'll be on your academic record. But again, it speaks to how you'll engage with the academic community beyond that, things that can't be quantified. Your teachers and your recommenders will help us understand that outside of just how did you achieve in the classroom. Won't get too much into the third category because this is about standardized testing. This isn't too much relevant to the essays. This is just another academic marker. So keep in mind that SAT or ACT are optional for us if you're applying next year for fall of 2025. After that year, we may revisit whether we'll require them again. We do, if you're not in an English medium curriculum, so if your high school is not taught in English, we will ask you to take one of the following tests: TOEFL, IELTS, or PTE. So again, just mentioning that because that's another part of our requirements. But again, the essay part will be primarily within that first section, and also recommendations, which I'll talk about in a little bit. I'm going to skip over the next deadline. I won't spend too much time on this, but this is basically about application deadlines. Generally, colleges in the U.S. will have one early deadline and one regular decision deadline. We can get into more details about that, but it's not especially relevant to the essay component. But I will say for early deadlines, those tend to be for students who maybe have identified that college is a top choice. So I will say that if that's the case for you, that's where the institution-specific part of your essays will be maybe the most important. So with all of that information in mind, again, like I said, a lot of things that, like I said, really define Princeton, and maybe you'll find similar things that define the experience that other colleges you're looking at. You really want to hone in on what those things are and what are the things that most resonate with you. They may not all resonate with you, right? I mean, there may be things more academic or more community-wise that you want to cover. Again, you only have so much time between the personal essay and then some of these short answers. But really hone on the things that really jumped out at you, like, wow, that faculty member and that research, Princeton does that, or College X does that. That's really interesting to me. I really want to get involved in that, and I'm definitely going to write about it. Do some research on the website, or however you can learn more about that particular faculty's research, or maybe that particular extracurricular activity. And those are the things that you're going to be easiest to write about in the personal components as well as the short answers. So let me flesh these out a little bit. How do you approach these four different areas? First of all, with respect to the personal components, especially, be reflective and be authentic. We want to understand who you authentically are, not who you think we want you to be, but how do you uniquely see yourself fitting into the areas on campus that most appeal to you. Princeton's not the right fit for every single student, but Princeton can be the right fit in a lot of different ways. You might tell us a very different reason why you're a great fit, while another student will tell us another great reason why they're a great fit that may be very different, but they can certainly be valid. So as long as you're touching upon things that you're passionate about and you're authentically interested in that Princeton offers, those can be very good things that help us understand your fit for the university, but also helping us understand what's uniquely influenced you, what experiences have shaped you to gain those interests. So being reflective on those is important too. When I say reflective, I don't just mean report, I did this, I did that, I did this, and I want to do this, and I want to do that. That's great, but we're not looking for a shopping list or a grocery list. We're trying to get a sense of, why are you interested in one particular area? What was the genesis of this interest, or what happened to this experience that made it particularly important to you, right? So again, being reflective helps us understand a little bit more of the context of it and also how you feel about it. This is what it really helps us understand the authenticity of your personality and the genesis of your interest. If this sounds weird and foreign to you, you're not used to writing about yourself this way, consider journaling or other writing exercises, keeping a diary, keeping a journal, things that help you kind of get in the groove and exercise those mental muscles of what it means to write about yourself. Do this before the college application process. It might be relevant to your daily or a weekly thing where you write about things that have interested you in the classroom or outside the classroom. But this will help to get you comfortable writing about yourself and your experiences. As we said, many applications have multiple essays. So you may be treating some as more kind of telling us about your journey. Some of them might tell us more about different aspects of why you're interested in an institution or why it's a good fit for you. But think about them as a collective. They're telling us different threads about you, your experiences, and your goals. And you might use one to write about more academic areas, and some of them will have an academic essay. And you might use another one to write about a very different part of your experience that you hope to have. But make sure that you answer the question. You may be touching upon different themes for different colleges, but if I ask you specifically on an application essay, tell me about a time that you had a difficult conversation with someone. You might have a really good essay that answers another question, but if you try to slot that essay into that question, it's not really telling me what I want to know about you in that particular instance. So make sure that you are answering the question. In addition to looking at these essays, start early. Start drafts early and make sure that you edit. It's very hard. It can be very confusing to understand the important elements of your experience if an essay is poorly edited, if it looks like it's rushed, there are sloppy mistakes or whatever. But starting early will help you kind of get comfortable with that and fleshing out the ideas and give the opportunity to have other adults or teachers or peers review it and edit with you, helping us understand who you are and maybe giving you an outside perspective as well. like I said, these deadlines are usually in November or January, but the essay questions are usually posted well in advance of that, usually as early as August or September. So you will have several months in advance. The graded written paper component I didn't include here because, again, it's pretty self-explanatory. There are guidelines for that, and those are usually specific to the institution, but this would be, like I said, a paper that you've written in the classroom. So I don't have a bullet point for that here. But the last point here is to make sure that you use the optional parts of the application. So where you're talking about various circumstances, these are more contextual and informative than reflective. So here, in this case, you might have some reflections on it, but really, if in this semester or this month or this year, there's a particular challenge you want us to know about, whether it was based on, it impacted your academic performance or one way or the other, you can certainly use this component for that as well. I'm coming close to time, but in addition to what I want to see in essays, like I said, use your recommendations as well as other narratives from people that will tell us about you and maybe support some of the themes that you're writing about. So what is usually submitted with the school report and the transcript is, a counselor or a principal at your high school. If you don't have an equivalent, like I said, use an Education USA or other resources as well. But do include academic instructors. This is usually 2 of these are required. We require 2, or usually you'll have to have at least 1. These don't have to be written in English if your teacher doesn't speak English, but we will ask them to be translated. So in some cases, if you have an English teacher at your school, or you can even use resources at Education USA for translation, that's fine as long as it is actually translated. But these will tell us, again, a little bit more of a narrative about your achievements in the classroom beyond just the grade that you received. And then maybe if they know you outside of that context, maybe they can also tell you about your contributions to the community outside of academics. And if they don't, but you have optional non-academic recommendations that can tell us about your community contributions and that can tell us about the way you've impacted certain activities in an employment opportunity as a volunteer or an internship, that's certainly acceptable as well. So not all students submit optional recommendations, but again, this is not necessarily a more is better scenario. Don't feel like you have to submit as many recommendations as possible. But if you do want to submit anything optional, do factor in, is this a recommendation that this individual, excuse me, is going to speak to areas that other recommendations won't, and will support other things that I'm writing about to help them understand my goals, my experiences, and what I want to do at the next level. So again, not necessarily included in the essay component, but these will be individuals that you want to think about. Hey, I had a really good relationship with this teacher or with this instructor, this advisor, and they can speak to a lot of things that I'm going to speak to on the application. So I think I've wrapped up and I've used about all of my time. So I'm going to stop there and to say, if you want more information about Princeton or our process, these are ways to get in touch with us through our website, through our social media presence as well. And I encourage you to do this at other colleges you're looking at, because again, those elements of what defines the university experience and helping you understand what resonates with you and where the best intersection is between what you want to do and what that university offers. This is going to be really important to find out what those areas are and prepare you for the essay writing process. So I will stop there. I'll pass it back to Victoria to guide us through the next part and the Q&A session.
Thank you so much, Alex, for such an interesting and informative presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I feel like I've learned so much myself. So we've got the first question from a student who's wondering, thank you so much for such an interesting webinar. Could you please explain the difference between an application essay and a motivation letter?
Sure. So I'm not too familiar with the term of a motivation letter. I think it could be used in different areas, but I assume this is a letter written by the student to demonstrate interest. The personal statement, the application essay can include a lot of different terms. It can include the personal statement where you're talking about yourself more generally, and that's something you could tell a lot of different colleges about your broader interest in an academic discipline. I think that's fine. The motivation letter or kind of like the institution-specific areas, if the institution offers that, I think you could focus on kind of your fit more and the motivation for why you're interested, not just the area, but also studying that area or that community at that college. So I think they can generally both be applied to different terms, but one of them may be a little bit more targeted at that individual institution rather than a larger personal essay that you could kind of use for several different colleges.
Thank you so much for such a great answer. And we've got another question from Nina. So Nina is wondering, what are some common mistakes in admission essays?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd say it's things that can be avoided by some of the tips that I offered earlier. I mean, things that are not reflective, that are really, like I said, just telling us about this experience happened and this experience happened and this is what I want to do. we want to get a little bit more sense of the human aspect behind that. What were the things that happened, and why do they motivate you in a certain way? And another example with the personal essay, a common leading question that is asked is about, tell us about a particular event or a particular person that influenced you. And that might be an event that happened, or it might be a family member or a very close community member that influenced your interest in a given area. And that's a great leading point, but make sure that you bring that back to yourself, right? You will talk about the influence of that person, of that event, but make sure that you're talking about yourself personally and why that has impacted you and your thoughts and your reflections behind it. I see a lot of great essays about a student's parent or student's grandmother, and that's great. And I want to admit the grandmother because I don't know enough about the student. So make sure that you're factoring that in as well. Beyond that, I think essays that are written maybe a little bit too quickly, that aren't edited, that like I said, give us a sense that you haven't spent a whole lot of time on it, really refining it, helping us understand you. If there's a few grammatical mistakes or whatever, that's not going to kill your application. And if there are extenuating reasons why, we do have students who say, I had to rush my essay because I don't have computer access or electricity or whatever, and that was a major impact because of the war or whatever. And yes, that's certainly taken into account. So that's where you can use those optional circumstances. So again, optional areas, I think that can be another common mistake where students think we don't need the context, or they feel like providing that context of circumstances feels like making an excuse. We don't see it that way. We don't see that as ways of making an excuse. We see that as an opportunity for us to fully understand the context of maybe why your grades were a little bit lower in one term, even though you're a very capable student, but you had circumstances you were dealing with that other students are not dealing with, or maybe why you had to rush your essay because of the access. Without that context, we don't necessarily know what the impact was. So take advantage of that if you can. It's an optional component, but if you feel like there's important context for us to know, certainly make use of that space.
Thank you so much for such an encouraging answer. And another question I often get from students would be about the cost of admission. A lot of students really worry about costs mounting up when they start applying to university. So I was wondering, is there a chance for students to be considered for an admissions fee waiver? And what would they need to do to qualify for that?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And application fees are also a part of the application. For most U.S. universities, they can range anywhere from 60 to 100 US dollars per application. And then if most students apply to at least 5, 10, 15 schools, somewhere in that range. So you add that up, yeah, that can certainly get expensive. We're not interested in creating any kind of financial barrier, especially at our level as well. So most often, this can vary by institution, but more often than not, institutions are very generous and understanding in granting fee waivers as well. Sometimes there'll be a request, and you have to kind of just put in a written request and have like someone at your school, a counselor, or maybe an Education USA counselor who can say, I can speak to this as a lower income student. Paying the application fee would be a financial hardship. And then the university will say, sure, we'll grant your fee waiver request. Some colleges, Princeton included, don't even ask you to submit that request. You can just click a button and attest by the honor system that I'm a lower income student. This fee would impose a financial hardship. You don't even have to ask. You just hit the button, and then by the time you get to the application submission, the payment section will be waived, and you can submit it without. But if you're not sure of how to do it based on the website or the guidance, always ask. It's always fine to ask a question. Some institutions may say no or have other protocols, but it never hurts to ask. And like I said, with the colleges like Princeton that have the most generous financial aid, especially for international students, usually those are either always granted requests or you don't even have to ask. It's just, you can just go ahead and by the honor system, waive your application fee.
Thank you so much for your answer. And I did get a question throughout your presentation. You mentioned that students who haven't been taught in high school in English would need to submit proof of English proficiency. So I was wondering, can a certificate of the Duolingo English test be accepted as proof, or do you only accept TOEFL, IELTS, or PET?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So those 3 tests I mentioned are the only ones that we officially accept: IELTS, TOEFL, or PTE academic. The Duolingo test is very new, and we are having our faculty evaluate it, given that the level of proficiency required in English at Princeton is very high, even higher than other elite colleges, in part because of we are not just a liberal arts college, but one with a very heavy emphasis on writing. Like I said, the writing seminars and the thesis are required as well. So we're still evaluating Duolingo and whether we can accept that as well. If you don't have one of those tests and you either only have a Duolingo or whatever, or an SAT or whatever, we will still fully review your application. We know, again, those tests are very expensive, and Duolingo is an option, a more cost-effective option. While we don't officially accept it, or kind of we still require students to take it, if you don't have one of those tests, we will still fully review your application. We will review your essays, we'll review your academic transcript, and we'll make an informed decision outside of that. But we do require those because those are the one thing that we can require of every single student. But understanding, again, that if it's cost prohibitive or whatever, we will not just throw your application out if you don't have that. We'll give it a full review.
Thank you so much for such an informative answer. And I guess a final question on my part would be a rather general one. So how would you maybe describe like the perfect prospective students that you are looking for at Princeton University? So what are some of the qualities that can really make a student stand out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the important thing to keep in mind is that the broader aspects I talked about understanding the intersection of who you are and what you want to do academically, but also outside of that, and how that fits with the university. Those are the most competitive applicants, right? There's no perfect applicant. There's no one way to do that, right? I think that would be similar for me asking however many people you have in this call, 100, 200 people. All of you agree on what's the perfect meal, the perfect favorite meal. And you'll probably have 100 different answers, right? Because there are so many different ways to achieve that, and different subjective ways to make a great meal, or that can be perfectly valid. But that's kind of what our process looks like, and that there are so many diverse ways for students to engage. As long as you are open to the main tenets of academic inquiry, innovation, research, and then also engaging with the community outside of the classroom, there are hundreds, maybe thousands of different permutations of ways to put together a very compelling competitive application. Now, the reality of our pool is that we have far, far more of those students who are great, kind of approaching that great fit applicant than we have room for. We are a small institution, under 6,000 undergraduates. So if we admitted every single student who is a great fit, we would have tens of thousands of undergraduate students, and we just don't have the capacity to do that. So, but at the same time, we want students to showcase what their strengths are, why they're a good fit, and we will take the absolute best students of those categories. And it means we're not able to admit every deserving student, but we try to put together a very diverse and high achieving class of those best students. So I think really my advice to you, whether it's with the essays or the recommendations, the academic portions, or the process when you're looking at the application process, knowing that, yes, these are highly selective, but focus on yourself. Don't focus on what's the overall admit rate, or what's the overall admit rate for Ukraine or for international, whatever. Those are just statistics that are compiled after the fact, right? When we're looking at the pool after all those very intensive decisions have been made. But as you saw when I was talking about the holistic admission process, we're not just looking at your name and number and your scores. And if that was the case, we could have an algorithm do the process for us. We're really understanding as people, as human people, who the human people are as they apply, and understanding the full application as you're writing about it and as people write about you. That's why we require these essays. That's why we require these recommendations, because it really helps us understand not just how do you perform, but what are the human components of your motivation, of your goals, of your achievements, and how has that impacted you? So there is no sure thing in the admission process unless you don't apply. If you do not apply, then I can guarantee your admission rate is 0%. You can never obtain a chance if you don't try. But I will tell you, there are far more people who did not think they would be admitted that eventually are admitted to Princeton or similar institutions as well. So it may work out, it may not, but the only guarantee is that it will not work out if you do not take that opportunity to present yourself, present your strengths as you can on the application. And like I said, there are a lot of great support resources on our side of the desk where you can reach out to ask questions. I cannot say enough good things about the support resources at Education USA, internationally, and the support that you do for these students. So please do use those resources, not just at your school, but at USA, because they are a great guidance to you, to us on our end as well. And they will give you every opportunity to really present your best case possible in the process. So make use of those, always ask questions, and put your best foot forward.
Thank you so much for such an in-depth answer and for sharing some great pieces of advice with our lovely students at home. I would just like to encourage our users to please do not hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions about writing essays or anything in general regarding admissions to the United States. We would be more than happy to support you and guide you throughout your journey. So for today, we are wrapping up, but I do encourage you to tune in next week for a session with a Ukrainian student, Valeria Pavlik, who's currently attending Bard College and is going to share some of her experiences and knowledge about this experience and, of course, about life as a Ukrainian student on a US campus. We wish you the best of luck in the admission process, and if you have more questions specific to the university, to Princeton University, please do not hesitate to reach out. I would be more than happy to help you and, of course, connect you with a counselor if you have more admission-specific questions that we cannot respond to. Best of luck to you, stay safe, and stay with Education USA. Bye!